Welcome into NHL Tonight. First shift for a Tuesday, November the 26th, 2024. EJ Radic here, alongside my guy Kevin Weeks, looking very sharp today.
Actually,
I like that bright red.
Thank you. Fire red, but I'm always partial to double blue. You know why?
Kind of. Why?
You know why?
Why?
St. Mike's Buzzers back home.
Oh,
Original
okay.
St.
There
Mike's.
you go.
Those are colors.
Well, you know, you got like a little Carolina Hurricanes, New Jersey Devils thing
little
going
bit,
there.
yeah.
And you played for both,
That's
so
fair.
you're allowed.
That is fair.
For
that is fair.
you know, I was at the Devils game last night. They
Yes.
played well. We'll get to that in a little bit. I guess just let's get right going to first things first here today because, you know, we had the coaching change earlier in the week. Jim Montgomery takes over in St. Louis after a long 5-day absence from coaching in the NHL after being let go by the Bruins. And the Blues respond with a 5-2 victory over the New York Rangers.
Big victory for them. Much needed big victory. Jim Montgomery's got to be happy with the result. And anytime you can come in and win at the world's most famous arena, certainly against a Stanley Cup contending team, that's a big win for anybody, but it certainly was for the Blues given the coaching change.
And you could see, like, on the bench afterwards, like, a lot of the support staff, they, like, the equipment guys, the medical guys, those guys, they knew Jim Montgomery when he was an assistant coach over a couple of years in St. Louis. They got to know him. And so you could see a comfort level there right away, which is unusual, right? Normally you don't have that.
That's right.
They were pumped up for him.
They were pumped up for him. And keep in mind, his wife's from East St. Louis. They have a home there. He played there as a young player as well. After his time.
But he said, once a Blue, always a Blue.
Once a Blue, always a Blue. So there's that familiarity. I like your point, and that helps make those transitions easier, because with that familiarity, you kind of have a vibe with that person. That goes a long way. So you could tell they were pumped up last night.
Weeksy, you were in the play. You're in your stall, sitting there getting ready for a game, or getting ready to practice, and here comes a coach in like Jim Montgomery. Now Jim has had all that success the last couple of years in Boston, right? Playoffs didn't go so well, but he had a record regular season last year. Another big year. I mean, his regular season record over the last couple of years is unbelievable. Some of those players already knew Jim from St. Louis when his time there as an assistant. You're in that locker. He walks into the room. Like, is that something that gets everybody kind of up on their seat a little bit and excited?
For sure. And I would say this, and again, I've said this because we interviewed Drew Bannister right here.
Yeah.
I've known Drew Bannister since we were kids. We played against each other.
Yeah. And there's no question he ended up on the short end of the stick.
He ended up on the short end of the stick.
There's no question about it. And I hope Drew gets another opportunity, because it really wasn't a fair look. It was like 60 games total.
For sure. And I literally played against him since I was 8.
Yeah.
To junior, to the OHL, to the American League, to the show. So he'll get another opportunity, I'm sure.
I hope so.
But with those things, your question, of course they catch everybody's attention. And by the way, the debuts at Madison Square Garden as well.
Yeah.
So you put all that together, you could tell that the Blues were on their toes last night. They certainly played. They were more assertive in their game last night. Not to say that they haven't been at different points. But Robert Thomas being back as their offensive engine really helps them. But they were perked up. They were geeked up and ready to go last night. Make no mistake about it.
Yeah, 43 shots on goal in the game.
Yes.
And afterwards, the teams are like, they release this video now, usually the post-game celebrations, and there's always something they do. This is pretty cool. A new thing what they got there. You can see the captain, Braden Shen. Yeah, he's got, like, I don't know if you hear it great there. He's got those are Kelly Chase's shoulder pads. Yeah. And Chaser is obviously a friend of the show and a friend of everybody in hockey, really. A terrific guy, battling cancer, battling, for his life, really, in the fight for his life here. And he's had some health issues over the last several years. And so he's such a beloved figure in St. Louis. And now they have his shoulder pads as something for the players at the end of the game. Is like, hey, you get the, you get the helmet, you get this. I would say getting Kelly Chase's shoulder pads, if you remember the St. Louis Blues, is a pretty nice little thing at the end of a game when you play well and your teammates offer you that as kind of a player of the game.
All of those post-game things are meaningful in different ways, club to club, team to team. But when you're doing it for somebody that wore the sweater, that's a part of the organization, that's beloved there, that lives there, that played there for 8 years, that's bled for the city and for the organization, and they're going through a battle, and in Kelly Chase right now going through that battle with cancer, that hits way harder.
Yeah.
That hits hard.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, there's a significance. It's one thing to put on, a different type of helmet or something else, and I'm not belittling any of the other ones.
No.
They all have their own meaning.
Yeah.
But this, of all that I've seen, is the most meaningful.
Yeah.
I love it.
No question about
great.
it. And we love Chaser,
Yeah,
and we
Chaser.
hope, Chaser, if you're watching, hang in there, keep fighting.
Keep battling.
He's a fighter.
He is.
So, I mean, you know, he's going to keep battling. But he's meant so much in that city, and he's been a great ambassador for the game.
That's right.
And he's always looking out for people in the hockey community.
Oh,
so we're
yeah.
looking out for him. So that's pretty
Well
cool.
said.
And I like those shoulders. That's like the shoulder pads I used to see when I was
Same.
young lad
Same.
back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, they end up beating the New York Rangers last night, and there's been a lot of discussion about the Rangers. Here are the last three. This is not ideal, obviously. 0-3, giving up a lot of goals. They've been giving up a lot of rush chances, and the goalies had bailed them out. Well, can't bail them out forever. Power play's going nowhere. You can see giving up a ton of shots. I mean, you have been amongst those. Elliot Friedman had a note about it after the loss in Edmonton the other night. You talked about, you know, potential shakeup. What are we hearing? What's the latest? And what can they do? Because in the season, the salary cap's tight. I mean, yeah, it's nice to say we're going to trade this guy or trade that guy. What are you getting for them that's going to make you better? I don't know. So what are you hearing?
Okay, so first of all, let me qualify this. I was just on the phone with some people involved with the Rangers prior to this show. All of that said, Elliot had that great report yesterday, and certainly to his point, I think the best way to characterize it all is the New York Rangers, #1, are a Stanley Cup contending team. For one,
that's how they feel about their team, and they made it to the Final Four last year.
That's right.
Yeah.
And even here on our show,
yeah,
I said I see the Rangers and the Oilers playing in the Cup final. That's just me. We're spitballing. We're hot stoving.
So many things happen.
So many variables. It's not to discredit any of the other teams. But all of that to say, they got off to a really good start. Then they got hot. Then they've kind of cooled off in this last stretch. And with that, when you are a team that is a Cup contending team, you got to leave no stone unturned. So I'm told, and it makes a lot of sense, they're looking at every and any possibility to improve their team right now. That's the way it was characterized to me. They're looking at everything. This isn't a team that says, okay, hey, we're 12-7-1 each. We're in a great spot. We're good. That's not the case. They were exploring everything. In addition to what Elliot said yesterday, they're exploring any and every opportunity to improve their team right now. And a name that they didn't mention to me, but that was mentioned to me from a couple other managers, is K'Andre Miller, in addition to what was reported yesterday by Elliot.
Yeah, he talked about Trouba and Kreider, veteran players.
As veteran players.
Some trade protection. I believe it's a 15-team trade protection list. Trouba's got 1 more year. Kreider's got 2 years. Kreider's deal probably makes it harder for you to move him. At the end of the day, I do wonder, like, what you can get. Now, K'Andre Miller is interesting because he's a younger player. His contract is coming up, right? So that changes the dynamic of things. He's had some challenges this year. I mean, there are bumps that come with being a young defenseman in the National Hockey League. I got a lot of time for K'Andre Miller, but it hasn't been as easy this year. Sometimes guys get distracted by different things in their lives, and, that impacts them. Here's a look at a board we put together, some names like Ryan Lindgren. I think, he's probably someone that's going to be out of there next year. So time will tell. Riley Smith is, he's a short-termer. We'll see how that plays out. He's been so far okay. But I look at the Rangers, and they're thinking, like you said, no stone unturned. I think they look at their team and see the same thing I see, which is like, we're good, but we get in a 7-game series with Florida again, and they throw Barkov out there. Can we match that?
Can we match that?
Do we have at the top of our lineup, and really, Zibanejad is their #1 center, and Trocheck is in at 2, and then you have Hedl when he's healthy, who I really like.
Yeah, he's been very good. That third line's been good for them.
It's been really good with Cooley and Kakko.
Yes.
Cooley is a really good player. They got some of those young guys coming,
a lot.
but they don't have, do they really have a #1 center? And like what Vegas did a couple years ago, right? They took a shot. They took a shot with Jack Eichel.
Totally.
They weren't sure, right? Like, nobody was sure it was going to happen. It could have gone bad, but to get a player of that ilk, sometimes you got to take a chance. And the Rangers could have been in that too. They didn't think that was really worth the risk. In the end, Vegas took the chance. They get Eichel. They have a legit #1 center. They're raising the Stanley Cup, a couple years later. They have a 1 in Eichel. They have a 1 in Pietrangelo. The Rangers, to me, Zibanejad's game has kind of moved backwards over the last couple of years. I don't know if that's reversible at this stage. And so they look at that and they see, like I see, which is a team that we're good, but can we win it all? And I say I don't think so right now with this group. So maybe they're trying to reconfigure, which is very difficult to do during the season.
Very difficult to do in season, and difficult to do as you'll hear our conversation upcoming with Kenny Holland. Difficult to do in the early part of the season, especially in the first quarter, because everybody's still in the mix. Everybody still thinks they have a shot, and rightly so. But for Mika Zibanejad, somebody who I've been a big fan of, we've both seen him play live at the Garden so many times. And Mika, to me, when he's on his game, he can match up with most guys in the league because he's big, he's strong, he can skate, he can shoot, he can score. But for whatever reason, he's off his game to me in this last probably 6 months or so, I would say. Just seems something could be off. He could be battling an injury. I'm not
That's
sure.
right. We don't know.
He could be playing with
But
something
all we know is
undisclosed.
we watch, right?
Exactly.
And then we watch and we see.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's that top of that mountain, it's hard to get to.
Oh, yeah.
And so everything's got to be working.
Yes.
And, you know, I would say Mika of 2 and 3 years ago, different player than he is now.
He was on,
right?
no question, no question. So I'm not sure if he's battling something. But for the Rangers overall, and what I think was really interesting is the Rangers, hey, listen, they really try to be very tight with how they operate.
Yeah.
But even with the offer to Shesterkin, huge offer, huge, massive, would be record-setting.
Yeah.
They big, and then now to put that out there yesterday. So this shows me that further underscores there's no stone unturned for them. They're looking for how they can improve their team.
And the cap will go up next year, so that'll help them moving forward. Let's go across the river, because the Blues, who played the Rangers last night, travel to New Jersey coming up tomorrow night. But I was in New Jersey last night, and Nico Hischier just keeps on keeping on, doing what he does. I mean, he can play the 200-foot game. He had a hat trick last night, natural hat trick in the second period. I mean, this was kind of a little bit of whoops, and he beat UC Saros, who was removed from the game after 2 periods. He did make a lot of good saves in the game prior to that, but you can see here, the goal leaders in the National Hockey League, Reinhart with 16 alongside of Draisaitl, Ovechkin, who's out right now at 15, but look at this. There's Nico Hischier with 13 right in the mix. I just love the guy's two-way game. He's the captain of that Devils team, and we saw them at the very start of the season. They started well, and they've been playing very well for the most part all year long.
All year long, right from when we saw them in Prague.
Fast,
but fast on both ends.
Yes.
Fast on both ends. And we saw it right from their first practice.
Yeah.
We saw it was there. It was there. It was evident, the tempo, the speed, and again, not just skating and attacking, but recovering the position, recovering pucks, getting into battles, all those different things. And that's one thing I got to say, Sheldon Keefe has done a really good job with that. And I literally talked to Tom Fitzgerald as well prior to this show, former teammate of mine when I first came in the league with the Florida Panthers, their GM, who's had a wonderful offseason. Literally talked to Fitzy on the way in here. And I said, how would you characterize your group right now? What would you say? I know my team's hardworking in all facets of the game. I know that we battle in all facets of the game. And I know that we're very competitive. And he didn't even get into the skill, Didn't even get into, because we know they've got loads of that. But I think if there's somebody that kind of exemplifies that, and there's several in their group, but coming off that hat trick, their captain, Nico Hischier, right now, exemplifies all those points.
No question about it. And they fixed their goaltending in the offseason, which made a huge difference for them to have Markstrom and Allen now. You're set in goal. They will be without, for the upcoming game against the Blues, Timo Meier. He ends up getting a 1-game suspension. He got into it with Zachary LaRue right here in front of the net and gave him that cross-check, rode up, hit him right across the face. He got a 5-minute major game misconduct. You're going to see it. It's not pretty. LaRue is the kind of guy that gets under your skin. I was watching him last night. His parents, I believe, were at the game, and they were sitting in front of, like, where I was sitting. And they should be proud of their son, because he played hard. He had a goal last night. He annoys and gets under your skin. And sometimes when you do that, you elicit that kind of response, obviously over the line from Timo Meier. To do that, he gets the game suspension, so he will miss the game against St. Louis. I mean, what do you make of that? I mean, to me, it's pretty cut and dry. That's a suspendable play. I think it's pretty cut and dry, but I think if you're on either end of this, so if you're Tom Fitzgerald, who I mentioned, or his former boss, and Barry Trotz, who's the GM of the Nashville Predators, I think in either instance, you kind of like what you see. If I'm Barry Trotz, this is part of LaRue's game. He likes to get in there and be a shift disturber, right? And which he was. And your point, nice breakaway goal by him yesterday. He's a shifty. I don't know if he's a swifty, but we know he's a shift. Well, he's part of our show.
That we know.
We have shifties.
There we go. There we go.
We had that yesterday.
There we go. I like it. I like it.
JD, our producer, came
up. That a boy, JD. So I like the competitive spirit. And hey, listen, Timo Meyer's a big man, big, powerful guy. He got up in his grill. He's like, okay. And then for Timo Meyer, he's then saying, okay, hey, you want to get up in my grill?
Yeah.
This is what it's like in the show. He gave him some lumber. He'll pay the penance, so he'll get a 1-game suspension. All around, thankfully, LaRue's not hurt.
Yeah.
And I just like the competitive spirit, and you were there to see it firsthand.
Yeah, and again, for Zach LaRue, I hope everything is okay with him, because I was impressed with his game.
Yeah.
He makes himself known during the game, which that's the job that he has. Let's go out west, because Mac.
Oh, return to the back.
Celebrini putting on a show.
Once again.
He put on a show last night against the LA Kings out in San Jose, a 3-point night. He had a couple of goals. Sharks are playing some better hockey of late. They really picked it up after that really tough start. And a nice performance, blowing out the LA Kings last night.
I was watching that game through its entirety, even though I had it on the background for a little bit, and it was 2, then 2-1, then 2-2. Then I look away, and I look back, and then all of a sudden I'm like, what's happening in this game?
They had long power play opportunities,
exactly.
and they took advantage.
They totally did. And what's really impressed me with the San Jose Sharks, and not only Celebrini, but the different guys in their group as well, is this. Sometimes when you're on those teams, it's easy to be a little tentative. You're not really on your toes. You might be on the midpoint of your feet, but you're not on your toes. I'm very impressed with the fact that the Sharks are on their toes.
Yeah.
These guys are playing on their toes. And you heard Jim Hiller's comments post-game.
Yeah, he said, hey, these guys are pretty good.
Yeah.
Let's, we know we're rebuilding this, that, and the other thing is we played them 3 times. They beat us twice, and we had to kind of, claw to get the 1 win against them. And, I saw them at the Garden that night. They were competitive against the Rangers.
3-2 game.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, they got some young pieces there. Well, nobody talks about William Eklund because we're talking
really
about
good,
Smith
man.
and Celebrini. He's
Very
been there
good.
a couple of years, but he's developing into a really nice player.
Yeah.
They've kind of upgraded the goaltending with Askarov. Askarov from they picked him up in that trade with Nashville. So, San Jose Sharks, certainly more fun season than the last couple, and fun to watch. And Celebrini, he's got that long stick, wins a lot of puck battles. He's really good in those kind of tight areas for a young guy that's just, he's a little bit more than 18. Look at this. This is from Sports Logic and Mike Kelly and his
shout out
there.
Yeah.
Puck battle wins per game. I mean, that's even more than Hischier. I mean, that's a hell of a list.
And all of those guys on that list are good two-way centers.
Yeah.
It's not only like they're offensive players, in the offensive dimension only. They're good two-way centers, those guys.
And I think that's what Celebrini is going to be. Like Ala Crosby, Ala Forsberg before him, that type of player.
Yeah.
And he's got offensive skills, and he has, like I said, he uses a long stick. I was talking with Drew Remenda about that when he came to the Garden. Drew does the color analyst job.
Nice to see Drew back too, by the way.
With the Sharks, and a lot of the younger guys use that longer stick now. When we were kids, they always had that short stick. You want to get you over the puck.
Yeah.
It's a little different thinking now, but he's able to win a lot of those battles, and it's good for the Sharks. I mean, it's good, for the fans going to the games there.
For sure. And they've been loyal
for a little excitement.
Exactly. They've been loyal for so long, the Sharks. If you've never been out to San Jose, I tell you, that was one of the best buildings to play in. As a visitor, forget even as a Shark, as a visitor, because first period they come out and pepper you 20-5 in the shock category. Of course, as you saw with the great Jumbo, the great Marlowe, and Burnsy and Pabs and everybody else. But one thing that really impressed me when I met and spoke to Celebrini at the draft, and then when I spoke with him and did an interview with him for ESPN during Player Media Tour in Vegas, just prior to the season, he just seems at ease.
Yeah. You're right.
He's not awed by fully respectful of the NHL.
Yeah.
But not awed by the stage. And I don't know if it's because of his dad's work with the Warriors for all these years in the NBA, but he seems very self-assured, very confident, respectful, but he's on his toes. That's the youngest Hobey Baker Trophy winner ever in college hockey history.
Yeah, like I said, he's just turned 18 over the summer. So good to see Celebrini and company with a nice win over LA. Let's get to tonight's schedule. It's a short schedule tonight, unusual for a Tuesday. But with Thanksgiving, the holiday, Monday and Wednesday, we load up on games. We got 15 games tomorrow night. You got the Canucks and the Bruins in Boston, and then you got Utah Hockey Club at Montreal against the Canadiens, both 7 o'clock starts. Some news from that Canucks game. Here is a note from Ian McIntyre. Rick Tocchet confirms that Brock Besser will play tonight versus the Bruins. Max Sasson will come out. My understanding, maybe Max will come back in tomorrow. We'll see. Tocchet said Sasson was a tough decision, doesn't deserve to come out. coach said he told Sassen, stay ready, could play. There you go. Could play tomorrow in Pittsburgh, so we'll see. They got back-to-back games. And we talked a little bit about young Max, who was a friend of the program, had an assist in his opener. But let's get to Brock Boeser. So happy to see Brock Boeser back. Took that nasty hit in L.A., has missed some time. You always worry when guys take a hit up high, concussion issues. Good to see that Brock Boeser is back.
Really good to see Brock Boeser back because he's a very important player for them, with or without JT Miller, who's their ace, really, and the heart in a lot of ways of the team, both him and Quinn Hughes on the back end. But Brock Boeser, what's unique about him, he doesn't have to be a volume shooter for this Minnesota native. It's one shot, it's on a stick, and he can beat you clean.
Yeah.
And he can beat you from range.
Yeah.
He doesn't need 10 shots a game,
No,
He's
he
not one of
doesn't.
those guys.
He doesn't.
He gets that puck on his tape, and when he's convicted about shooting, and hey, I'm going to use that. I'm going to be very assertive and shoot, use that heavy shot. He can beat any goalie.
Yeah.
So nice to see him back. Nice
No
to see him
question.
healthy.
Yep, absolutely. And we also hear Thatcher Demko getting closer, so we'll keep an eye on that as we move along. When we come back, we got a great guest, Kenny Holland. You mentioned it, the longtime general manager of the Red Wings, and of course with the Edmonton Oilers last year, led them to a Stanley Cup final. So much experience. We're going to talk to Kenny Holland when we come back right here on First Shift. There you can see the long and very Hall of Fame, a Hall of Fame resume right there. He's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Went in 2020. The Stanley Cup's in Detroit. Took the Edmonton Oilers as their general manager to the Cup final last year. Now working as a consultant for the NHL's hockey operations group. It's our pleasure to have Kenny Holland join us now from out in Western Canada. Kenny, thanks so much for the time. And, you know, I'm going to take you all the way back because you are a member of the class of 75, the draft class of 75, 188th overall by the Toronto Maple Leafs as a goaltender. I got a goalie right here. You played only a handful of games in the NHL, but you played a bunch in the American League. What was it like playing in the American League in the late 70s, early 80s?
Well, I loved it. I played 9 years of pro hockey, 8 in the American League, 1 year in my first year pro in the North American Hockey League, and then I was in Binghamton, New York, and the North American Hockey League merged with the American Hockey League, or the American Hockey League took some of those teams into their league, and I played 8 years. A great league for development. You know, lots of the coaches and the referees and the players that I played against went on to play in the National Hockey League, so was a great experience. And I think it was really important for me as I became a scout and eventually an assistant manager and manager. That experience for me playing in the American League and player development, probably along with my time with Scotty Bowman and Jim Devellano, really formulated my I guess my development plans as I eventually became a general manager.
So there was no fighting and no mussing and no big good stories, right? There was no good stories.
Well,
about
there's lots of
long bus
stories, but I don't know
rides.
if I want to. There's lots of stories, but some of them probably not for air. But you know, I played junior. I played junior with the Medicine Tigers the 2 years previous, and you know, Brian Maxwell and Barry Dean and John Hillworth and Don Murdoch and Morris Lukowicz, lots of players that went on to play pro hockey. Every night there seemed to be like a brouhaha. You know, there was a fight. Everybody had one or two tough guys. It was a different era. Some on ice brawls. You know, 5-on-5s. I can remember one night in Flin Flon.
Yeah.
We were in the locker room fighting the Flin Flon Bombers.
So good.
Another night at Pacific Coliseum, Don Murdoch got beat up real bad, and it was a brawl, and both teams got kicked off the ice. So they're completing different time than today.
Goalie fights, maybe you were involved. Who knows?
A couple, not a lot.
Not a lot.
I was a peacemaker. I'm 5'8". I couldn't get too wrapped up in the goonery.
There you go.
So from peacemaker to deal maker and getting into that managerial side. You know, Kenny, something that's really been fascinating, which I respect with the likes of yourself, the other greats, and the great Lou Lamoriello, yourself, and Glenn Sather, all of you, is that you really have an open mind when it comes to people on their journey in the game. And with that, you've given people what some people would consider to be second or third chances. Why have you been so open-minded? And maybe you can speak about that in terms of your managerial approach.
Probably, nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
And I guess, everybody likes to have a second chance. And I think, maybe a second chance in terms of as a hockey player, if you didn't pan out, another opportunity elsewhere. And, if you've made some difficult decisions off the ice, bad decisions, poor decisions, ultimately, I think people will pay a price, and you like to give somebody another opportunity to make it right. So I guess that's been my philosophy, and some agree with it and some might disagree with it, but certainly that's what I've tried to do in the time that the 27 years that I was the general manager.
Love it.
Kenny, Weeksy talked about a deal maker, and I mean, that's the job, right? Of the manager is you're trying to put the pieces together for your team, but sometimes that calls for making deals, making trades. What can you get? What do you have to give up? I mean, we're in that part of the season now where people are eyeballing their teams. We see the stories. They might want to shake up their roster. How does it work? How did it work for you? Did you target teams that you thought might have guys that you like and might be a fit for you? How did you go about trying to put a trade together? Because sometimes it could take weeks, months, who knows, even years.
Well, first off, there's two probably real times to make trades. Is it the draft week when everybody's kind of reconfiguring their team, and then obviously in March at the trade deadline when you've got the buyers and the sellers, and that's trading players from today to help somebody for futures. A little bit harder in October, November, and December. That's really, you're trying to find an apple for an apple. You're moving a player from one team to another team. It's maybe a little bit harder, but some trades go down in matter of minutes. At the trade deadline, and other things. I remember calling Bob Murray in Chicago in October or November in 1997, I think. They got off to a tough start. They had Chris Chelios. And I asked him if he would trade Chelly, and he said, no chance. And I said, if things ever change, give me a call. 10 days before the deadline in 1998, I think, about 4 months later, Bobby Murray called me and said, Ken, are you still interested in Chelios? I said, yeah. And we ended up trading Anders Eriksson and 2 first-round picks for Chelly. And didn't win the cup that year, but we eventually won the cup in 2002, and he was second in the Norris Trophy voting. I'd acquired Chelly. I think he was 37. He played 10 years for us. So, the trades can happen in different ways, and sometimes you got to work at it for a long time, and other times they just kind of come together quickly.
I respect all the cups you won. That 2002 one
still hurts.
Just hit me in the ribs from our Carolina team against you. That just hit us in the ribs there.
Weeksy, they had 43 Hall of Famers.
They had 180 Hall of Famers.
They did have an advantage.
Oh, my God. But what a team.
Yeah, it was a great team.
In 2001, we lost in the first round to LA, and Jim Devellano and I met with Mr. and Miss Illich. We still felt we had a team, but we needed to do something with some impact, and we that offseason we traded for Dom Hasek, and then we signed Brett Hull and Luc Robitaille as free agents because we had lost Kozlov in the deal for Dom Hasek to Buffalo, and we needed to get some offense. And we got off to a great start. We won the President's Trophy, and with about 10 games to go, we had the President's Trophy, and we decided, I talked to Scotty Bowman, decided to rest some guys, and the last 5 games, let's put everybody together, and we kind of lost our mojo, and we lost games 1 and 2 of round 1 against Vancouver.
Yep.
And, we were reeling, found a way to kind of win the next 4 games and went on to win the Stanley Cup. But such a fine line between winning and losing, and all those experiences, when you win the President's Trophy, should you rest guys? Should you keep the pedal to the metal? You never know what to do, but because, and now within a salary cap world, I look at the standings every day. There's so many teams that are so close. It's such a fine line between so many teams. It's a great league, but certainly it's fun when you can finally hoist that Stanley Cup. It's very hard to do.
Yeah, it is. To that end, listen, we spoke about development earlier. And you've done a great job of not only developing players, but also developing managers, coaches, front office personnel. But somebody that we both know well, I've known him since we were kids, and I would like to ask you about him as one of the bright young coaches. And my guy, Jay Woodcroft. What can you tell us about Woody? What can you tell the fans about Woody and some of his top attributes are?
Well, I'm a big Woody fan. I got to know Woody in 2005-06 when Mike Babcock hired Woody as the video coach for the Detroit Red Wings. I didn't really know much about Woody, and Babs went through his process and ended up hiring Jay. And so Jay Woodcroft was with us for 05, 06, 7, and 8, and then we won the Cup in 08, and then Todd McClellan and Jay Woodcroft left us to go to San Jose, and then he went from a video coach to an assistant coach with Todd McClellan in San Jose, and then when Todd went from San Jose to Edmonton, Woody went with him, and then Woody decided to go back to the American League Bakersfield, and he coached Bakersfield. So what I like about Jay Woodcroft, number one, is he's been at he's been a video coach, he's been an assistant coach, he's been at the NHL level, he's been a head coach in the American League level, and then he got in 2022, I think, when we were sort of reeling under Tip, made a decision in about January to make a coaching change. Woody came up and really got us into the playoffs here and got us to the Final Four. Next year we had bounced back with 100 and something points and lost in the second round to Vegas. But Woody brings a lot of energy, a lot of X's and O's. I know he's gone to Europe. He's gone all over the place to kind of get different philosophies about the game. He's worked under Mike Babcock. He's worked under Todd McClellan. He's ran his own team, so he's got lots of experiences. Has a great work ethic. Has an ability to build relationships with your players. I think he had a tremendous relationship with Connor and Leon, the top players in Edmonton. Unfortunately, we got off to a terrible start a year and a half ago, and we had a lot of players in their prime. And Jeff Jackson, who'd come in as the CEO, and I talked a lot and talked to Daryl Cates, and eventually made a decision to make a coaching change. Obviously, that really worked out. Chris Knoploch is a great young coach, but I certainly am a big believer in Jay Woodcroft, and I believe he'll get an opportunity, and he'll do a great job for whoever gives him the next opportunity.
Hey, Kenny, you talked about coaches there, and it's something I wanted to ask you because we've just seen a couple of coaching changes, right? Jim Montgomery moves out of Boston after having an unbelievable record, ends up now in St. Louis. Drew Bannister is kind of a casualty of that, and we're going to be talking more about it. It seems like there are a lot of coaching changes in hockey. That's just the way it is. What is that process like, for the fans, the viewers, the listeners out there? What is that like? Because you talked about the owner, the CEO involved like that. How does it go? You didn't have to fire very many guys in Detroit. You had to do it a couple of times in Edmonton. What is it like? How does that kind of the swell build towards that kind of decision? Because it's a big one.
Well, they're major decisions. I think as an NHL general manager, that's probably the most important decision that you can make, is who you're going to hire as a coach, because obviously that person's behind the bench. He's working with your players on an everyday basis, brings in the philosophies of how your team wants to play. So that's your most important decision. And I think that, like you said, in Detroit, when I became manager, I had Scotty Bowman from 97 to 02, and then he retired on his own. We decided to stay in-house. We'd won the Cup, and we had Dave Lewis for a couple of years. And then coming out of a work stoppage, I decided to make a change and hired Mike Babcock, who I had for 10 years. And then he left to go to Toronto, and I had Jeff Blashill for 3 or 4 years. So never had made an in-season coaching change until I got to Edmonton. Obviously, you have to, what's going on with your team. And, in Edmonton, if are you in a rebuild, or are you trying to compete for the Stanley Cup, or are you sort of in the middle? And, when I went to Edmonton, we got Connor and Leon, the primes of their career, and ended up, and other guys, Nugent Hopkins and Darnell Nurse, and originally it was Clefbaum and Larson, and then they were gone. But we were trying to win now, and I thought Dave Tippett did a great job in getting us into the playoffs the first year. And the next year we made the playoffs, lost to Winnipeg, and then we were reeling. And after a lot of thought, talking a lot. At that time, it was Bob Nicholson and Daryl Cates. Made a decision in the middle of the season to let Dave Tippett go. But obviously, when when you make those decisions, you talk to ownership. You're talking to your key people. But you can't talk to a lot of people because you're talking about the coach that's leading your team. So it's got to be a real tight circle of people that you're talking to, and ultimately, you make a decision that you believe is in the best interest of your organization, and then you hope it works. Sometimes things don't work, but you hopefully get a. In both times that we made the decisions in the season, when Tippett to Woodcroft and Woodcroft to Knobloch, we got a real positive reaction from our players, and the players really reacted to the move. And one year we went to the Final Four, and the other year we went to the Stanley Cup Finals. So, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
All right. Well, listen, Kenny, thanks so much for the time today. And I know you're doing the work with the NHL now with Hockey Ops. I got a sense, you could be doing some of your old job again somewhere. So we'll see how things go. But thanks so much for the time today. We really, really appreciate your insight.
Nice talking to you guys. I watch you on a regular basis. You guys do an incredible job promoting our game. Thank you.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks so
Kenny.
much, Kenny.
Kenny Holland, Hall
Thank
of Famer, longtime manager of the Red Wings and the Edmonton Oilers. When we come back, Winnipeg Jets.
Wyatt.
They're off to a great start this year. We'll talk about the Jets and maybe talk about the team they beat last night, the Minnesota Wild. That's coming up next on First Shift. All right, let's take a look at the playoff picture here in the Eastern Conference. This is how it sits here as we move closer to U.S. Thanksgiving, which is obviously Thursday of this week. Happy Thanksgiving to all those who celebrate. And you can see here the Leafs on top of the Atlantic, Devils leading the Metropolitan. They've played more games than some of those other teams. And you can see the wild card chase. That's going to be a chase for that last wild card spot. A whole bunch of teams there. We see, we go over to flip it over to the Western Conference. The Jets with the great start they've had and a big win last night. Connor Hellebuyck just amazing again last night in that game. That's the reason they won. They're up by 6 points in the Central and the Pacific. Golden Knights, they have the lead. Surprising Calgary Flames, Kings, and you can see Avs and Oilers. We expect those teams to keep moving up. The Canucks, they need to get it going in the right direction. Fred's struggling. So, when we look at where we're at for the first quarter or so of this season, Weeksy, the most impressive has to be the Winnipeg Jets, correct?
Yeah, for sure. They are for me. We've spoken in this very studio about the Jets within the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And you ask what word comes to mind for me when I watch the Jets? Just complete. Yeah. They're a complete team. I don't see any real holes in their game in terms of how they play.
I would disagree with you a little bit.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, in terms of how they're playing.
But, because Hellebuyck, it's like a couple of years ago when the Bruins had that great run.
Sure.
And people are the Bruins. And you think when a team is putting up that kind of record, you're like, well, they'd just be blowing everybody out, right? But what I see when I see the Jets is what I saw with the Boston Bruins 2 years ago, which is that the goalie is playing way more of a role than you think when the team is this good.
Yeah.
Swayman and Omar, particularly Omar 2
years
years ago, were unbelievable. And there was Bruins games night after night where they would make 8, 10 really good saves and the Bruins would win.
Yeah.
And when I look at the Winnipeg Jets, and last night is a great example, and I saw it also against the Florida Panthers, against the New York Rangers, is that Connor Hellebuyck, I think he faced 21 shots in the first period. He had 43 saves on Monday night in that game against the Minnesota Wild. So, I like your point about they're complete. They have a lot of really good players, but, they can't keep going through the year leaning this heavily on Connor Hellebuyck because eventually, you played the position.
Yeah, it could wear you down.
Wears you down.
It could wear you down as him, as the goalie, and as a team. The complete that I'm looking at is their style of game.
Okay.
So I don't see really any gaps in their style in terms of, okay, there's a big drop off from first line to second. Second line, third, especially that Lowry line.
Yeah.
You got Pionk who's making plays, and you have Morrissey who's a stud.
Yeah.
But if there is an area of their team, in addition to your point, that I'd like to see them improve, I'd like to see them add a little more on the blue line.
Yeah. I like some more size.
I'd like to see a little more on the blue line.
A little more bite.
Yeah. And a guy, I'll give you an example. A guy to me who would have been great on the Jets, who's been excellent for the Devils, is our guy, Brandon Dillon.
Yeah, and they had him.
And they had
and he ended up deciding to leave as a free
Yeah.
agent.
Yeah.
You know,
No
that's the
doubt.
way it goes
No
sometimes.
doubt.
But I think that they'll
Yeah.
be in the market. Like Logan Stanley's been out the
Yeah.
last little bit, so
Yeah.
he's a big guy. I
Long
see
and
when I
rangy.
watch their games, they lose battles at the net. Sometimes they get overpowered there. And so that's an area that I would like to see them improve. But it's been a great look at. I mean, hard to argue with an 8.18 points percentage.
Wild.
Let me ask you about the Minnesota Wild. Like, because again, we look at most surprising teams. Calgary has certainly been a surprising
too.
team.
Yeah.
But the Minnesota Wild this year, they missed the playoffs last year. And I mean, even with this great run that the Jets are on, Minnesota Wild are barking right behind them. And what a great record to start the season.
Yeah, listen, they've got to me the Hart Trophy winner to this point. I know he's injured in Kirill Kaprizov. At this point, I would have him as my Hart Trophy winner, but they basically have the same personnel. Matt Boldy's been excellent.
Yeah.
Marco Rossi's played well. So some of those younger guys, our guy Brock Faber, who we really discovered last year in our NHL Network Showcase games.
Part of the U.S. World Junior team.
Absolutely.
You can see he was coming.
And he's arrived. And in the net, they've gotten good goaltending, obviously, between Gustafsson and the Flower when he gets in there. So all things being equal, the Wild are off to a tremendous start. Much better than I would have thought based on their personnel and not really any huge acquisitions in the offseason. And quickly on the Wild, you know who I love there the last couple of years? Under the radar, Middleton on the back end.
Yeah, they got him from the San Jose Sharks.
Been really good for them.
Scored a goal last
Again.
night. Yeah, he scored a goal. He's a tough cookie. He's a character, right?
Yes.
So
I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah, so, hey, it's been a great start for the Minnesota Wild. We'll see, they could still use maybe another centerman. Maybe that's something they could do before the end of the year. And I'll just throw one more at you, because you mentioned this young man's name last week in regard to the Nashville Predators, which we're going to next, by the way. But you mentioned the name. I believe it's Sidney Crosby. I just will say this. I don't know where Sid's going to do.
No, but
Nobody knows what he's going to do. Only he knows what he's going to do. And you talked about Nashville, and that makes sense.
Yes.
From a
Hockey
standpoint of they have the assets.
That's right.
And they also have a need.
Yeah.
But the Minnesota Wild, Billy Guerin, close relationship with Sidney Crosby over the years. Right? There's a lot of ties there. They need center help. Obviously, anybody would love to have Sidney Crosby. Flower is there.
Cookies.
Just saying that, Minnesota. He played at Shattuck when he was a young man. Just saying, if Sid were to go anywhere, might be a place. All right, let's get to Nashville now. Let's go to Nashville. The disappointing start. Watched them last night. Now, they did have a nice win over Winnipeg earlier in the week, but no Hellebuck in that game. You can see the numbers right here. They've been a little bit better after that really tough start. Penalty killing, excellent.
Special teams in general.
But they're not scoring.
Yeah, they're 5-on-5. Their goals per game is crazy at 2 point something, given the personnel on their team. I'm a believer. I'm going to say it on the record. I think they're way better than they've played. I think they will be better. Barry Trotz is working the phones. He's looking at every opportunity to improve the club under their ownership. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to acquire a left-handed center. I know that's what they need, and in speaking to them, but I'm very curious to see where this goes. I think they're way better than they've showed so far.
Do you think?
Way better.
Do you think they have too many duplicate pieces?
There's a lot of the similar pieces between Marchessault, Stammer, and Forsberg. However, a left-hand center.
And?
A left-hand center.
Yeah.
Which leads me, and I love your call on Minnesota as a potential for Sid, but...
I mean, and we only say this because the Penguins are sitting here in last place in the Metro Division with 18 points, 391 points percentage. I mean, I don't expect them to make a big charge up the standings. Now, again, Sidney Crosby's going to do whatever he wants. That's the way it's going to go down.
No question.
But those are two places, and Nashville could certainly use
I like
a
your call
lefty
too.
center. And they have the assets.
They've got
first-round picks. They're going to do something, Barry Trotz and that group. When we come back, we got plenty more here on First Shift. Something a little special for you, and maybe something you might want to keep in mind in terms of your wallet. So stay with us on First Shift. It is time for the Top Line Parlay presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, and that means J.D. Lindbergh is going to come in here. And what do you got, J.D.? You got winners for the people?
Usually when we have to do the parlays on a Tuesday, I got a bunch of games to choose from.
Not tonight.
Not the case. Only 2 games in town. The parlay tonight, just from one of them. Here we go. I like Vancouver to keep it close. So plus 0.5 in the first period. That means the Bees just can't be up by more than a goal after the first period, okay? Jake DeBrusk, welcome back to Boston. He's been ripping it up, actually. Can we see font 3 here, Sterno? His stats on the road this season. Check this out. Jake DeBrusk, 5 goals on the road. All right, yeah, so,
Yeah.
and you know what? He's one of these guys that needs like a little juice to get going. I remember he had a big game against Edmonton last year, going home, Edmonton guy. Let's go back to the parlay for the final one. Speaking about homecomings, how about Connor Garland? Shout out Situate, Mass.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like Connor Garland for 3 or more shots on net tonight. Fellas, what do you think about the pick?
I like it. I like it. Connor Garland going to be playing in front of family and friends. Some
Yeah.
money on the board for DeBrusque back there.
Yeah.
Why not, Eej? What do you
And you
think?
got to hope for like a tie game at the end of the first period, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what we're looking at here.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think that's all doable.
Yeah, I think
That's
that.
doable.
It's got legs.
You know, listen, only 2 games. He didn't have a lot to choose from.
That's right. You got to get creative.
That's right.
Got to get creative.
There you go. All right. Okay, I like it. All right, when we come back, Week C, close your eyes. Don't look, Week C. We got a little surprise for you coming up. It's a special anniversary, Week C. Stay with us here on First Shift.
DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NHL. And this week, new customers can bet $5 and pocket $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the app and use promo code FLY when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Week C, on this day 19 years ago, we were in the same place.
yes.
We were in the same place.
Yes.
MSG, you were on the bench. I was
Oh
in the
my
press box.
gosh.
And this happened. Merrick Malik, it was the first year of the shootout.
So unreal.
That was so sick.
The Statue of Liberty Selly, too.
Yeah,
We're
there
going
it is.
bonkers.
Yeah.
The Statue of Liberty Selly was unreal. That was so. It's funny you said that. I got a text on that today.
Really? Happy anniversary.
Early today. That was one of the most iconic moments at the Garden.
Yep.
And I'll show it to you just so you know I'm not.
All right,
horsing-
there it is.
There
Yeah,
it is.
There it is.
There it is, folks.
You
So,
can't see it.
I got it.
All right,
Yes,
hey,
that
listen,
was awesome.
all I can tell you
Merrick
is this.
Malik,
shout out to Jason Strudwick.
Yeah, Struddy
Because
too.
Struddy scored.
Yeah.
It was almost over.
Yeah.
They announce his name. Fan sitting in front of me goes, oh, right? I won't use the word he used. He was not happy. Struddy went right down and buried it
No
on
doubt.
Ole
No
Kolzig.
doubt.
And they ended up winning with Malik.
I got
So
goosebumps even just talking
there you
about
go.
it.
Happy
We had
anniversary.
such a good
We're-
group there.
I wish we need more time
too.
on this
Talk to your
show.
people, Eej.
I'm going to talk to my people. All right,
JD,
NHL
talk to
Now
somebody.
coming up next. Happy anniversary, Week
Let's
C.
go. Happy anniversary. Thank you.